yesterday as well, or Monday rather. I was thinking about it, made me recall. Do you remember the Boston Marathon bombing in like
Mm,
2013?
Yes.
yes.
It made me recall that week because if you remember what happened that week, the Boston Marathon bombing took place, I want to say on a Monday. And then I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. It might have been Wednesday. The fertilizer plant in Waco, Texas exploded. And that didn't feel like as big of a story. There's like 14 people who died, if I remember correctly. It wasn't as big of a story up here because I think the following day or that evening that it happened, the the Midwest, Illinois, in our region, we got like 8 inches of rain.
Yeah.
We got flooded. And I remember there was of Lyle that were underwater. And I remember it was horrible. And I remember thinking that week it was just one of the worst weeks I've ever seen for America. Like every coast had something going on, like some sort of insurmountable tragedy. Then you had the manhunt for the Boston Marathon bombers, the brothers, and everything. I felt this kind of similarly this week, where it was like every time you looked at your phone, it was just like bad news or something. You know what I mean? Something damn depressing.
Yeah.
So why not talk movies? That's my rationale over here. Movies are my lane, and I will Paul Walker myself in it. That's my philosophy in life. It's Dom looking suspect over there. Dom, how are you?
I am doing okay. Steve, thank you so much for that wonderful Tom Cruise-esque monologue circa Oscars 2002 for us. But for me, it's the middle of the busy season, and I am just trying to honestly not staying busy because that's just inherent to my situation. So honestly, I am here. I am still standing. Do you guys do spring? Do you guys do spring cleaning? Do you guys do spring cleaning?
Yeah, I just did it. I'll talk about it more during my thing, but I just literally did it.
Yeah, it's like I haven't had time to do that. So the house has just gotten the townhome has just gotten worse. live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, it's Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Happy to be with you today. It is a one-topic, one-movie show today. We are talking Twisters. It felt like it was big enough to carry its own and gives us a lot of time to go into detail and stuff, because I was kind of assuming that not only growing up in the Midwest where we've experienced tornadoes and tornadic activity, we have some personal experience to draw on that might take a little bit longer than the average review. And we can always harken back to talk about the 1996 movie, which this is a follow-up to. So it's all things Twisters today. There's no shortage of things to talk about. Coming off a really good week. Hopefully you guys can say the same as well, you watching. And of course, the two lovely gentlemen, Joe Viso and Dominic Guanzon, always kind enough to join me to talk movies in the midweek. So looking forward to that this weekend at the movies. It's funny. I should know, I go there every week. There's 14 screens in the theater, the theater that Catherine and I always go to. I checked briefly today. I didn't think there was going to be anything else coming out with Deadpool and Wolverine coming out tomorrow. I didn't think there'd be anything competing, like there wasn't really anything competing last weekend. This has got to be the fewest number of movies in theaters out here, at least, that I've seen, because you got to think like Deadpool and Wolverine's probably going to take 3 of those, 3 or 4. And then you got Twisters is probably going to take 2. And Inside Out, you got the kid movies too, which might take up an additional 2. So if you add all that together, that's 11 right there, and then there's some Bette Midler movie coming out. There's some Bette Midler movie coming out, which
Holy shit. Are we bet heads here in the chat?
I think she always did. I don't know, Joe might fight me on this. I think she did the definitive version of Mambo Italiano, and that's about where my opinion of Bette Midler kind of ends. I think she did. I love her version of Mambo Italiano. I always have.
Is that the one with Dean Martin? No,
it's just her.
Wow.
It's just her. I love her version of that song, though. That's about as much Bette Midler, though, as I really know.
Gotcha.
But other than that, though, yeah, there's not a lot coming out this week. Next weekend's really, really interesting, though, because we have Harold and the Purple Crayon, which I'm the only one on the face of the earth, I think, who's excited for, and against my better judgment. And also we have Trap, the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, which I'm kind of wondering, and I'm sure you guys would not complain. I almost want to call the audible. I want to talk Harold and the Purple Crayon, but I also don't want to make you two sit through it. At the same time, I almost think we should do Trap in 2 weeks, because I know you guys have seen the trailers.
I am very curious about Trap.
Yeah, same.
I am ready to bite the Shyamalan bullet yet again.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like, me and Catherine are so looking forward to this movie. I can't wait for it. But you just know, and this is the thing we keep talking about. I said, he's going to pull some fuckery, though. Like, there's going to be some bullshit with this movie, because it's like Knock at the Cabin. It's been out now for like 2 years. Knock at the Cabin did not have a twist because it was based on something. It was an adapted work. Shyamalan,
and was it a good movie? It
was. Shyamalan actually reworked the ending to be a lot happier. If you read the ending of the book ending is like really sad. The movie, though, he really made it way more optimistic than the book ever did. But like, you kept waiting for the twist, and then I remember thinking like halfway through the movie, well, wait a minute, if this is based on a book, I don't know if he's really going to take any serious artistic liberty that's going to blindside us all. He did, but not in his usual way. This movie, though, it's an original thing. It can't be worse than his daughter's, though. It can't be worse than his daughter's movie this year, The Watchers. That's all I have to say. We're getting at two doses of Shyamalan this summer, but anyway, I'm scratching August 14th. I'm putting Trap on the schedule, just an FYI. I've talked myself into that, but we will touch on Twisters, though, coming up here in just a couple of minutes. First things first, start with you, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Throat's been a little bit wrangly, I guess, or like, just a little sore. I just got back from a trip. I went on vacation. Luckily was not one of the few people, I should say few. I was one of the few people who got to go home at this airport, while hundreds upon hundreds of others were stuck there, unfortunately, due to the outage that was happening with airlines not being able to have any communication with one another, with their satellites and all that stuff, and just basically providing just no way home for millions and millions of travelers. Luckily, I was with Southwest, so they were unaffected because Southwest just hasn't updated their equipment. So if like Dom said in the chat, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. So there you go. Um, I did get I had a good time on my vacation, but when I came home, like literally Sunday night, I felt like my throat a little sore, and I was like, let me just take some precautions here and let me bump myself with vitamin C, drink some tea. And what you know, by Monday, Tuesday, I was feeling a little bit down, but today I'm feeling a whole lot better. Enough to where I saw Twisters literally 2 hours ago. I just left this. I literally left the theater. It's 6:39 right now. I left the theater at 5:30. So
Wow.
literally an hour ago, I got home and set up the show and everything.
Hell yeah.
True game time decision.
Yeah, truly, yeah. And then finally, I know I've been teasing this for quite some time, but tomorrow will be my first official day at my new job. I will be going into more of a management position within a city. I won't say the name of the city. But after getting my master's degree, it was a position that was like, hey, you should probably have a master's degree when working this position. And I went, all right, well, if I need a master's degree, here it is. Let me throw my hat in the ring. And sure enough, this is like the quickest. And, it comes down to, of course, I had experience. I had the degree they were looking for, and I've been working with many other villages and cities around the area that I think like just they saw it and they went, okay, we'll go with this kid. It was like the fastest this ever has turned around for me from applying to a job and then eventually getting the job as well.
Hell yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. I hope it all goes good. I hope everything I've learned pays off. And if anything, this will probably be the gig I just kind of stick around with for like the next 5, maybe 6 years, unless if like they move me up some more. I kind of want to like just settle here for a bit, get some more experience in the management type of thing, and then move on to something bigger. But for right now, I am happy to go. I'm happy to be heading where I'm heading, and I hope I do good enough to stay there.
Congratulations, my friend. I know you. This is awesome because the whole duration of Sleepless has seen you like go back to school, and
That's true.
it's true. Like it's been the same timeline. It's been a concurrent timeline, and now you're on your way to a bigger position too because of it. So I couldn't be happier for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's awesome, man. How do you top that, Dom?
I don't. I absolutely don't. It's busy season, and which you hear me say every freaking week during this. It's a nonstop sprint from June to September. Actually, I should say not nonstop. There is a bit of a lull. There are a few lulls, but as Joe can attest to, those busy days are quite busy. So honestly, just gearing up for that, trying to see friends, trying to do what I can still do outside of work, outside of these overtime hours. So I'm not complaining too hard because I like me some overtime. And yeah, just maybe some more things that I can talk about in further green rooms. But for the most part, doing all right.
Good to hear, gentlemen. I guess we get the show on the road, start talking Twisters, the brand new disaster movie, which for starters, it's been a little confusing to kind of figure out how exactly this fits in to the original Twister. That's been one of the talking points, really, I think, since this movie was announced. This is a standalone sequel. That's pretty much what it is. It kind of operates in some ways like a remake at times. It feels a lot like that. It's not really tethered at all to the original story. It's not a fan service heavy sequel by any means. I just want to start by saying, before even talking about Twisters, I went back and watched, I don't know, how long ago has it been since you guys watched the original Twister movie in 1996?
Is Joe talking?
My bad. Yeah. I just realized my mic was muted because I was answering a call from my mom. I haven't watched this since I was a kid because it scared the shit out of me as a kid. And because I used to be terrified of tornadoes. I only watched half of it recently because it was on Max. And about halfway through, I just kind of turned it off. I was like, you know what? I'm like, maybe I just didn't like it as a kid because maybe I just didn't think it was that good of a movie.
Oh, wow. Not the reaction I was thinking right there. Dom, have you seen it?
It was one of those movies that was always on growing up. I don't think I've ever seen it like front to back, like sat down and watch it, but I do know I liked it. I'm probably due for a rewatch just like you did, Steve. But for me and for what a lot of people I talk to, it's like, yeah, this got me into like weather. This got
Yes.
me into storm chasing. Not that I know anyone who specifically went into that, but I know it has a huge effect in the storm chasing community. And for just people I talk to, it's like, yeah, I follow weather now. It's like that movie Twister growing up, and that definitely I in the periphery, I follow some storm chasers and storm things. Whenever there's a big storm system that's sweeping the Midwest, and passes through us or passes near us, it I always put on like live streams from a tornado. Honestly, just like this new 2024 movie Twisters, and it's really interesting to see that play out. So yeah, definitely. Honestly, I probably do for a rewatch on it. So yeah.
I recommend rewatching it. And you bring up the point that I was going to bring up too. One of the guys I used to work with at the previous radio station is now a television meteorologist. And he told me years and years ago, he was like, that was the movie that really got me into weather and wanted to study meteorology, because he's always had that kind of like, like card in his deck. And now that's what he's doing. He's a TV meteorologist. And I think underrated, and that's what made me think about it when I was rewatching it, and then when I wrote my review for stevepulaski.com, is the fact that Twister has, I feel like, an underrated generational impact on and I don't think it's a coincidence. Granted, the technology's gotten better. We all have phones with cameras and everything like that. But I don't think it's a real coincidence that we've seen like a rise in storm chasing and things like that since that movie has come out. I think that movie sort of democratized the knowledge of tornadoes, that, kind of planted a seed for a lot of people to get into weather and be fascinated by those conditions. And the other thing that I think was good about the original Twister as well is the fact that, there's a lot of movies that focus on like storms, like, like oftentimes like hurricanes or tsunamis or nor'easters or things like that. There's a lot of movies of that ilk. The difference with tornadoes, though, compared to those other weather events, is that like hurricanes often take a week to build. They're tracking hurricanes a week out. Nor'easters the same way. Catastrophic snowstorms usually get on people's radars about 5 days out on average. Tornadoes are so sudden. Are often so sudden. Oftentimes if a tornado hits, the weather is going to be shitty that day, but you don't know if the possibility of a tornado is going to hit until hours, sometimes minutes before it does. And it's quick. And it's quick too. Tornadoes never last very long relative to other weather disasters. And that's why I think tornadoes are kind of like, and also too, they happen in like, they don't ordinarily happen on coasts. They happen right in the heartland of the country. And I feel like the Twister was one of the first movies to really give sort of a humanization of that fear that we live in, because it's the most devastating weather event that can happen where we live, where we reside. We all have memories, I think, of either like, knock on wood, I've never seen a tornado in person. I've seen funnel clouds. I've seen swirling clouds like that. I was shuffled into the basement a few times as a kid. But I could think of like 3 separate times where like weather has definitely scared me. And the complete, like, I felt the feeling of having no control wash over me. Debatably, most recently was probably that derecho back in 2020. That huge windstorm. Still needs to be a derecho movie. But anyway, focusing on Twisters, though, there's a long-awaited or long-discussed sequel to this movie, directed by Lee Isaac Chung, who made my favorite movie of 2020, Minari. And was really happy to see him get this promotion. Was psyched for one, it wasn't a Marvel movie. And was psyched to see him get this promotion after that low-key South Korean immigrant drama that he made just a few years ago that kind of got sidelined in popularity due to COVID. But this movie's got Daisy Edgar Jones from Where the Crawdads Sing. It's got Glen Powell, who I think has the brightest star of anybody this year in movies, with how much that he has done and accomplished and how big his name has gotten recently. It's also got a guy I really like seeing, another underrated actor, Anthony Ramos from In the Heights. Anthony Ramos from In the Heights, and also that Crown Royal commercial, too, if you know what I'm talking about. I like him. I think he's good in this. This movie is... obviously it's a disaster movie. Doesn't have the most sound plot doesn't have the most elaborate plot, but I think there's a lot of things to like about this movie, and I think there's a lot here to discuss. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Joe.
I almost just dropped my mic on the floor. That would have sucked. Yeah, all right. Let me elaborate more on the whole Twister thing. So, like, I wasn't crazy about the original film upon rewatching it. Like I said, I stopped watching about halfway through and everything. But it's not to say that that movie didn't, like what Steve is saying. It definitely did capitalize on a weather type of disaster that I feel like would be perfect for movies, because it's like we always said, like Steve said, it's sudden. It can happen out of nowhere. There's actually a gradual build up to it. Like, it's like, oh, here come the dark clouds and everything. Like, it's perfect for like a cinematic experience where you're dealing with like, a weather disaster. There's been other tornado movies as well. Wasn't crazy on any of them. Like, there's one that's a found footage film. I literally just had the name on the top of my head and then I forgot about it.
Into the Storm.
Into the Storm, thank you. Where that movie gets batshit insane with its
underrated.
Tornadoes. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that movie, but there are some moments in that movie that I'm just like, you know what though, that was awesome. Like, there's a fire tornado in Twisters, and it's whatever, it's cool. But the fire tornado and Into the Storm, that's a real fire tornado. It's like, oh, okay, this is what I was looking for. So going into this, I've been excited for it for a similar reason to Steve. I love the director's previous work with Minari. Glen Powell is becoming like one of my favorite young actors out there right now, man. Like, he's just such a charismatic guy. Earlier this year, we didn't get to review it. Actually, it wasn't even earlier this year. It was like a few weeks back. I watched Hitman, which was directed by Richard Linklater and stars Glen Powell. And absolutely fell in love with that movie solely because of Powell's performance. And with Twisters, he also is another reason why I love the movie, because his performance is that good. But also, yes, Anthony Ramos and Daisy Edgar-Jones, they're also very good in this movie too. Especially Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glen Powell. Their chemistry together is really, really good. Everything I like about this movie, though, mainly revolves around them. I hate to say this too, it took about 30 minutes for me to start actually enjoying this movie. There's something about the opening to this movie where it's setting all the cards and putting everything into place. And this movie is not very story heavy. And I'm not asking it for it to be at all. I know what this is. It's a sequel to Twister. It's a 20-something-year-old sequel at this point that people have been waiting. It's been tossed around, like Steve was saying. I'm not asking for it to be very story heavy. But I do feel like the setup was just really taking its sweet time, and not in a bad way, not in a good way, where it was just like we're being introduced to so many side characters that are just literal caricatures of people. It's not until once you get out of that first 30 minutes and you sit down with mainly these three that they actually start to explore more of these three characters that I was actually starting to enjoy the movie more. And then actually now the side characters, especially Glen Powell's crew, not so much the antagonistic force crew, I guess. That's part of like Anthony Ramos's crew and everything. It's a whole complicated situation to explain too. But even Glen Powell's crew, as the film went on, even got better as well. Once it's like, okay, it's not like we keep quick cutting to so many different people across these two different crews and all having just a line or two of them just screaming or doing something so like cartoonish. It's just like, oh man, I was really expecting more out of this movie. Once it actually did slow down and started focusing on these three, I was really enjoying it more. And then last but not least, and I'll pass it off to Dom. Yeah, the tornado sequences in this movie, they're really good. It wasn't as crazy as I thought it was going to be, because the trailers made it look like this movie was going to be off the rails with its tornadoes. There's really just, I think, two sequences, I would say, that made me actually go like, holy shit. One of them involves they're at a rodeo and a tornado's about to go down, and I actually found myself gripping my chair there. And the other I would say was probably when you get to see Glen Powell's crew chase one and you see all the tech they have. It was really fun watching a drone fly around, how the truck kind of drills in and everything. It was really cool seeing how their tech worked. All the other sequences I was just kind of like, these are fun, but it wasn't as crazy as I thought this movie was made out to be with the trailers. And even though, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Twister, it wasn't as crazy as some of those scenes where it's like they drive through a fucking house and like, you know, this other one like picks up a cow and just kind of plays with it the entire time, just letting it swirl around.
That cow is like the number one image that I
It,
remember
it
from
really is.
that. I think it's been the most parodied too. That's probably why.
I've seen people online cosplay as that cow to screenings of Twisters.
It's really funny.
Anyways, Dom, you can go.
Yeah, this was a good time at the theater. This is a good summertime movie, and it's very floaty. I let me say that, and I'm not making a joke about like, you know, twister debris or like tornado debris and all that stuff. It's a little lighter than I thought it was going for, and the way it builds up to its big twister moments, its big tornado moments, weren't as, again, no pun intended, weren't as like, you know, epic or grounded feeling as I necessarily thought. I don't know. Maybe I think it's a style thing, which is really surprising because coming from Lee Isaac Chung, well, I've only seen Minari. Let me say, what a change, what a sea change completely from that movie to this. Maybe I haven't seen his other 3 films that he made before Minari, but it really feels like he's getting his footing in this more action disaster, big budget kind of thing. So, and also something that's probably his largest movie to date, just in terms of scale. But yeah, in terms of the performances, you have a good trio with Powell, with nope, not Bill Paxton. That's the other movie. With Edgar Jones, Powell, and Ramos. And you know, there's an implied love triangle as well. I don't know how well executed that may have been, but off of the raw acting power of these 3, it's pretty damn good. I'm especially thankful that Daisy Edgar Jones gets a second chance here from Where the Crawdads Sing, right? Or
Yes.
Where the Crawdads. Yeah, either way, I don't care about that movie. And I don't think a lot of people really did. But she was all right in it. And she really gets to prove her stuff here. She does very, very well here. Her difference in her character from before the big inciting incident, where, I mean, it's in the first 10 minutes of the movie, like where her crew gets killed, and then her living with that trauma, and then after, and like the weight of her actions and how she navigates through these storms is really is actually rather quite compelling, and contrasting that with Powell's character, very good. So in that specific lane, I'm very, very thankful for it, because that is honestly what drew me in more than what I thought was going to be, which was the big special effects, the big tornadoes. I kind of want to see Into the Storm now just to see how it compares, which I know is less realistic. Although the plot of this movie involves them trying to defeat tornadoes, which I'm pretty sure is not the original Twister. The original Twister is them just trying to, you know, better understand tornadoes with technology. This one, they're just straight up trying to kill a tornado, tame a tornado. But, you know, we're just like, okay, that's a direction you can go in.
Literally wrangle a tornado.
Yeah, quite so. I did like Powell's character the most, which I think is what everyone is coming away from. And it's like, yeah, those guys do exist, and they're on YouTube, and they're very, very interesting. But at the same time, I do think that this movie has it imported a lot of respect for the craft of tornado chasing, and just the culture around it, particularly with disasters. Because a big part of that whole sphere of YouTube, where it surveys the damage, and you see a lot of these tornado chasers, they do take diversions to like help local people, because there's only so much you can do with, you know, a very spread apart communities, and only so much emergency services that can do as much as they can. So with all that, it was overall a pretty all right time at the movie.
I will say, I didn't mind the opening sequence. You know what the opening sequence kind of reminded me of lately? A little bit of Final Destination. Because
Okay. Okay.
And as I used in my review, funnel destination. Um,
Shut up. Go to hell.
I have to say that one. I was proud of that one. But
That is
the
a good one.
opening, the opening sequence, it's longer. Like the opening sequence of Twister, if you go back and remember it, it basically defines why Helen Hunt's character got into storm chasing, was because her dad was victim to an F5. The John DeBont's opening scene for the original Twister was very tight. It was very claustrophobic. It was very scary.
Yeah.
This one takes a little bit longer to build because there's more. I think there's more at play here. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I think it gives good credence to Daisy Edgar Jones. I agree with a lot of the points you guys brought up. The only thing, and I think I'll be in the minority on this one too. I like the trio here. I think Daisy Edgar Jones, though, is the weak link. I do.
Really?
Oh, really?
I do. Huh. And I think when you have somebody like Powell in the supporting performance, he's just
that doesn't
lies in general. But I think that like Where the Crawdads Sing was not a good movie, but Daisy Edgar Jones gave a good performance. And I think Daisy Edgar Jones's acting style is very low key, is very muted. Kind of, she plays these introspective characters. And I think she's kind of a sagging point of the energy between the three of them, especially when compared to Helen Hunt in the original movie. So I didn't think she was bad. I just think that she's kind of muted. She plays to her strengths as an actress, which she's very good at, but I think there's a lack of energy with her that I think is more noticeable than the other two, especially when positioned against the other two. That would be my only point of disagreement.
I thought she was just as good with them. Especially when the movie slows down, and it's actually it allows time for her and Tyler.
That's where she's strongest.
Yeah, when they actually
like
have
you
like
said,
a moment,
Steve. Yeah,
when they actually have a moment. Sorry, I gotta clear my throat. When they actually have a moment to like actually talk between each other and actually learn each other more, that's when I think she really started to shine through. Because like again, that first 30 minutes, I feel like it's throwing so much at the board about all these characters that you're meeting that I feel like I didn't get a sense of who anybody was. It was just like, okay, like, all right, so Glen Powell, I mean, literally Glen Powell was like, first few lines in this movie are basically just him screaming yeehaw and like tornadoes and stuff. And it was just like, okay, all right, like, when are we going to actually see him like, act? The only person like, and it's like Javi, played by Anthony Ramos, was just kind of like, he's kind of just moving the plot forward for our characters.
In that opening scene, is like, is he a student or is he like an adjunct professor that's like taking these kids on a field trip? Because he's a little older, I think.
Yeah. And with Daisy, like, it's like she has the trauma of losing her close friends, including her boyfriend at the start of this movie, that like when they go and you encounter the first tornado after the opening sequence of the film, and she freaks out and she freezes in place and she runs away from it. It was just like, I feel like I should be feeling some emotion here, but it's like, I'm not. It wasn't until, the movie started to slow down a bit more, develop the characters more, allowed them to actually just talk to one another and learn each other's, like, history and who they are and whatnot. That, like, as the film went on, I really liked Kate's character. And I felt like her journey of, like, trying to stop a tornado, I was like, yeah, I know, I'm right there with you.
I think she is good in the scenes with Powell that slow down a little bit and get that, because what I really liked was they don't make Powell, it starts like this, but I think one of the smarter things they did with the writing here is they start by making Powell a little bit of a villain, a little bit of a showboater, and somebody who seems to be in it just for the glory and the cool YouTube shots. But his character is further developed, I think, maybe beyond what some people expected, in very good ways. And without ruining it or without like kind of giving away, Dom, you alluded to it, but I also think this movie has a far more honorific tone than the original when it comes to honoring victims of tornadoes and those that wind up becoming, the focal point of news coverage for the ensuing days after a tornado like levels an entire community and things like that. And then you see like images of like, crushed housing and businesses and cars toppled over and trees and wires and everything, the stuff that you see after a tornado outbreak. I thought this movie does really well, not only kind of doing a bait and switch on Powell's character, but also the way that this movie looks at the victims, because that's the one thing the original Twister doesn't really do. Granted, they're out really in the countryside. I think you're muted too, Joe. They're out in the countryside, and in the original movie, and it's more about them traveling to catch up to it, and it's a lot of farmlands, and no cows were harmed in the making of the movie, I don't think, but that's where I think Twisters improves upon its predecessor. I think it throws a little bit more at you, no pun intended, when it comes to the characterization specifically of Powell and also its portrayal of the victims.
Yeah, I think you could just make a case that Powell is just too damn good in this movie. He's just got too much of that energy, too much big dick energy. Like honestly, out of it takes a certain kind of someone to be able to make Anthony Ramos, one of the most naturally gorgeous men, if you just look at him, to make him look like a simp in this goddamn movie. But yeah, I mean, there was also a like subplot that never really got tied up too, about like land development or like.
Dude, thank you. The entire time I was just like, when are you guys gonna explain what the hell is good? Because like they're painting that guy to be the bad guy, but it's like, is what he's doing really that bad?
And also, like, there's a journalist that joins the crew, so it's like, oh, okay, so he's gonna come in and like do a story, and like they're gonna wrap that up. No, they never touch it again after it's brought up.
It's actually a lot like the original Twister, where they bring in Carrie Elwes' character, who steals Bill Paxton's idea for Dorothy, the tornado drum that measures like the internal makeup of a Twister. But his story never, like, it was almost like they introduced the human villain in the first draft of the script and left him in there, even though they don't really. He's not necessary. This movie kind of made the same mistake as the original. We're thinking it needed a human antagonist, when it really didn't. If it was going to have that, because there is, the vulturous career of real estate developers is certainly a compelling angle, but it's really nothing here. It doesn't get developed beyond anything. We got to take a quick break here for our Zoom Workplace sponsored intermission. When we come back, I feel like this is getting very under discussed about this movie, is the way this movie was shot, and part of what I think makes it look so good. We'll touch on that. We'll come back with that. It's Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening. Dive into it though. Furiosa Mad Max Saga. It is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road came out back in 2015, and I think us film nerds remember that very well. And it's funny too, because it was like, I had sort of the same mindset, I remember, going into that movie as I did Top Gun Maverick. I had not watched the Mad Max movies prior, but I watched the first three in the week leading up to Fury Road coming out in the theaters. And the first one I liked enough. The second one really captivated me. And then the third one was like a Return of the Jedi costume play. I wasn't blown away by the trilogy, though, I have to admit. I wasn't blown away by the original trilogy. Maybe watching it again down the road, or whenever The Wasteland comes out, that might be something I do, but I'm not really sure on that either. But I remember going into Mad Max Fury Road with like, kind of like how I approach many blockbusters. I was talking to Catherine about this when we went to go see this. I said, like, it should tell you something that this is a blockbuster that I am friggin' stoked for, because that does not happen very often with me. Even as a critic, I approach these almost with a sense of obligation. Outside of like Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, some of the series that I really like and connect with. But when I saw Fury Road, I had this like, I hope it's good. I obviously hope every movie I watch is good. But I did not know what I was in for. And the marketing, if you remember, did a really good job of back and better than ever after the Zoom at Workplace sponsored intermission. This is Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. We are talking Twisters, brand new Lee Isaac Chung disaster movie, Daisy Edgar Jones, Glen Powell, Anthony Ramos. We are talking this movie, Twisters. That's our whole show today. One thing that I feel like is under discussed with this movie, and you guys can make a comment about this, or I know Dom has got something that he wants to share as well too. I'm not going to stop that. I just want to make this point because I feel like nobody's talking about it, or very few. one of the how the original Twister came to be. There's a really good article on The Ringer by Adam Siegel, I believe his name is, that writes about how Twister became such a cult phenomenon. And it was how it became to be, really became a movie and then became a cult phenomenon. He talked about how the movie was greenlit based on a demo reel. It was Steven Spielberg who held a meeting and wanted to know in like in the mid 1990s, like right after Jurassic Park. He was like, has technology advanced to the point where we could make a realistic looking tornado? And he commissioned George Lucas's company to come up with the animators to come up with a demo reel. And it was like a 10-minute long soundless demo reel of a Twister ripping through like rural farmlands. The cow was part of the demo reel too. And Kathleen Kennedy at the time greenlit the movie and gave it like north of an $80 million budget. They didn't even have a script. It was just a untitled tornado movie. And that's how that movie came to be. Spielberg had a lot of involvement in getting Twister made, and he's an executive producer on Twisters as well. Now, with this movie, you were going to say, Joe? Sorry.
I was going to say, no, it was wild when the movie started, honestly. I saw it was Universal, Warner Brothers, and Amblin Pictures. I'm like, shit, I haven't seen those two work on a movie in so long. Universal and Warner Bros, that is, because Amblin is, part with Warner Brothers and Universal.
And that is Spielberg's company, yeah.
Yep. And it makes sense because that the first Twister was really something else for that effects and for probably the meteorology community, just because it was directed by unless you were going to make this point, Jan Dupont, who I don't know very well, but looking at his history here, it's like this guy's mostly a cinematographer who happened to also direct Speed and Twister. And Lara Croft, the Lara Croft sequel. But more importantly, Speed and Twister. And it's like, yeah, no wonder that movie looked good. No wonder I remembered it like
Speed's one of the best action movies of the 90s. You can't tell me anything otherwise.
Yeah. So like that checks out.
But going with Twisters, though, this movie, one of the reasons I think it looks really good. I think the effects look good. I think the destruction looks good. This movie was shot on 35 millimeter. This was actually shot on film. And I feel like that's an under-discussed point. And it was Lee Isaac Chung who demanded that and got Spielberg's blessing for it, because he felt, and I was kind of trying to explain this in my review, is that, and I think we're really seeing it now, not to harp on Marvel movies, but I think we've really seen it like in a post-Quantum Mania film landscape, is that movies shot on digital that feature a bevy of CGI, when entire sequences are just computer generated and everything's artificial, you get this sort of artificiality where there's so much digital it looks fake, especially on digital cameras. You've seen that a lot recently in Marvel movies where it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look as good as it used to. And Chung made the argument. He said something like this would look really good on 35 millimeter. And he employed a lot of different handheld cameras. They used like 5 different cameras for this movie to shoot this. And it's got to be the biggest movie shot on film here in quite some time. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if Hateful Eight was. I don't know why that popped into my mind. I don't know if Hateful Eight was shot on film.
That sounds like something he would do.
Oh no, it was because there was that special edition. I remember to go seeing this. It was shot on 35 millimeter, and you get the what's it called? You get the intermission with it. It was a very special one.
Okay.
Like it was shot in 35 millimeter, and then it would have the ratio done in a certain way, like similar to the Lighthouse. And then you had an intermission. I remember going to see that version of the Hateful Eight.
Okay. See, I thought that movie was shot on film. It has to be. Twisters has to be one of the biggest shot on film movies in years.
Oh, probably.
And
you know what though? It gives it that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it looks real. Even when the storms are doing like unconventional things and things like would not happen, it just looks real. There's a gravity behind it. You continue, Joe.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. When you're on the country farmlands and everything in this movie, you're going through open fields, you're going through, you see wind turbines, all this stuff. It just has a very country look to it. It's that same, like, it's crazy to say this, but like the way he shot Minari and how like color was used in that movie and just like the overall look of it, he kind of gives it that same look for Twisters, where it's very country, it's very farmland, and it just looks like an open field in America. It feels very rural. I think there's no other way to describe it other than, it's gonna sound so stupid for me to say this. There's no other way to describe it. It just looks American. I don't know what about it. It just looks American. It looks like when I open my window, I look in the fields out here, that it's like, that's Twisters. That's what I saw on the screen today. Like, that's just what I saw.
Chung now has 2 movies under his belt where he really directs the hell out of the heartland. And Minari was a movie set in like rural Arkansas.
Yeah.
And that the color of that movie, the location specificity of that movie is so important to it. That's why, like, yeah, it's different. The budget's like 100 times bigger than Minari was, but there's still hallmarks here. And I think Chung is starting to earn, it depends on where he goes next. He might even do a sequel to this, who knows, but he's starting to get a reputation of a really pastoral filmmaker.
Yeah.
Even with a movie like this, which is a full-fledged blockbuster. And I think that's really special. I'm glad he campaigned to make this 35 millimeter, because I think it does add a dimension to the whole movie.
100%.
You want to lead into what you were going to discuss too, Joe, or Dom?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just wanted to mention here, but I guess we'll go into our final thoughts, is that when Bill Paxton passed, it really showed how much that movie and his performance in that movie did for the meteorology, tornado chasing, storm chasing community. Because when he passed, a bunch of storm chasers, hundreds of them, came out of the woodwork to provide tribute by putting his initials BP on radar, by setting up shop, organizing, and then it crossed like 3 state lines, from Nebraska down through Texas. And I thought it was a really, really loving tribute, and really just shows the staying power. How I just really love how when one single movie, it has broad appeal, but it really does something for this one specific group of people. Like, maybe not the best example, but Titanic, obviously massive appeal, but also did a lot for like the shipwreck, like disaster submarining community as well. And it comes through so clearly, especially in YouTube videos, because like how it affects that YouTube. Same thing with war movies, like when like this very niche Civil War movie suddenly gets talked about in like the history YouTube community. Like, that's really cool, and like they either love it or hate it. And I just thought that was a really cool tribute, just to show the staying power of the original Twister. As for this new Twisters, I don't know how it'll affect said communities. It seems like so far they're like a little jovial about it, because the whole plot of them trying to tame a tornado, defeat a tornado, is like getting a chuckle out of some people. But I think they also recognize it's a movie, right? So that's whatever. And for the most part, they seem to be enjoying it. As for me, I'm gonna give this a solid 3 out of 4 stars, just because I had a really good time at the theater. It was giving me some really cool vibes with how it was. Even though it seemed a little more, I'll use that word again, floaty throughout. It was still a fun time, and honestly buoyed the most by the 3 performances here, particularly Powell, but also Edgar Jones. And hey, kudos. I love a good montage. I'm the guy who put Baz Luhrmann's Elvis on my top 5 that one year. That credits montage, pretty cool. That's a celebration of storm chasing and meteorology.
Oh, I didn't even see that, because I had to run home and get the show ready.
Yeah, no, it was a really cool montage, and I love a good montage. So yeah, 3 out of 4 stars for Twister. Very, very glad that this not turn into an overly, loving, where it relies too much like, hey, these characters are the sons and daughters of the original characters, stuff like that. And that, honestly, the fact that making it a standalone was probably the best move you could make.
I agree.
Yes, agree.
I'll stay with that. So yeah, 3 out of 4 stars for me.
I agree. And as much as I would have, Helen Hunt famously declined participating in this movie. She didn't even want to do the original Twister. That was a whole thing too.
Oh, shit.
She didn't want to do the original Twister. John DeBon had to talk her into it.
Wow.
I was kind of glad in a way. I like Helen Hunt, and I really like her character in Twister. But I was glad that like she didn't come back for this and like have the rote legacy sequel sequence.
I'm glad no one did. I'm glad
too.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Paxton really didn't have a choice. But
I knew it.
Yeah, I have a very. I'll let Joe go for his closing thoughts. I have one other quick point to make about that'll lead to my closing thoughts as well. And I got a funny Bill Paxton story I just heard last week that I want to share on the show. So I'll let you go, Joe.
Okay. Look, this delivers exactly what it needs to do. It's a fun time at the theater, especially if you're going to pay for those premium formats, Dolby, 4DX, whatever it may be. This is a movie to go do it with. I mean, like, we've been gracious that this summer has had blockbusters where I'm like telling people like, yeah, go see it in the premium format. Fall Guy, Furiosa, Twisters can now be added into there as well. It's been great to like see like, hey, like, these blockbusters have been shot so well, or like, there's something to their sound engineering that just makes it worth going to see it for that higher priced format.
Was this sorry, did you say that this was an IMAX or
I don't know if this is an IMAX, but I saw it in Dolby.
Okay.
I mean, I'm assuming it's an IMAX. Like, I don't know if it was shot on IMAX, but I'm assuming.
Oh, that's right. It's probably not if it wasn't shot on it. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably put into the IMAX format with its.
It is an
system.
IMAX.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I bet like there is no actual like IMAX like shot on camera type of thing. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and I think, and I've actually Googling that just now. I saw some people expressing disappointment about seeing Twisters in IMAX, and the fact that it was shot in 35 millimeter probably makes some sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
It wasn't shot with IMAX cameras. That's the other thing. What sucks? Do not to sidebar off of your closing thoughts or interrupt you. What sucks though too? Hollywood really, or the studio really fucked up in releasing this movie when it did, because it's going to lose all that those premium format theaters tomorrow when Deadpool and Wolverine comes out.
Yeah,
they should have done what Tommy Wiseau did in The Room and just shoot both simultaneously.
I think what they should have done, truthfully, and I had a conversation with the film critic James Berardinelli about this on the radio about a month ago. He said the same thing too. He said what they should have done is, he said, instead of the Fall Guy, they should have put the Fall Guy maybe in the fall, no pun intended. He said they should have put Twisters on Memorial Day. He said that's when they should have released it. He said it wouldn't have had any competition then.
That's a core Midwestern holiday. Absolutely. That would have played excellently.
I'm actually surprised they didn't do that, because when they were doing this movie and I saw Glen Powell was in it, I'm like, I bet you any money they're trying to recapitalize on what Top Gun had over Memorial Day weekend. And maybe they just thought Furiosa was going to make hella money. But I mean, like, knowing, like, the fact that Mad Max Fury Road didn't, I was like, I don't think I have too much to worry about. I am genuinely surprised they chose to release it a week. Was it a week before? Yeah, a week before Deadpool and Wolverine.
I wonder how it's gonna do now with that, because it's gonna lose its premium format.
I think it's still gonna do fine. Like, because I know plenty of people, myself included, who are excited for that movie to go see it and everything. I still know plenty of people though who, like, they're just kind of like whatever, like, they might go see it because Hugh Jackman's back and everything, or they've liked Deadpool and it's kind of more of just Deadpool's movie. It's not like you had to like keep up with so much about Marvel. It's really just like Deadpool and Wolverine. Yada yada yada. But I still think this will appeal to like people who are above the age of 50 that haven't kept up with Marvel movies or anything like that, and they'll still go see movies like this. Because it's like there's nothing else really for like an older crowd out there. The Bike Riders is out of theater. Fly Me to the Moon is about to fly the fuck out of theaters any second now. So it's like for an older demographic movie, this is probably going to be the thing that's going to keep them going to the theater this summer. Because I really don't see anything else past Deadpool and Wolverine, past that movie. I really can't. Anyways, where was I at? I wrote it down.
Sorry, your closing thing was so good it got us talking.
No, you're good. Like I said earlier, I wasn't feeling the first 30 minutes as it was trying to establish everything, but once it focused on Tyler, Javi, and Kate, it completely won me over, especially with the scenes between Tyler and Kate. There's an amazing sequence that takes place during the rodeo, and I thought like it's shot so well, it's intense. I even caught myself like gripping my chair at one point. And once again, I mean, we were kind of ending with this, but kudos to the movie for not trying to crowbar any connection to the original film, because we get so many of these legacy sequels that do that. Not everything can do it as good as Top Gun did, or even just like other good like legacy sequels down the line, because you know sometimes you get stuff that's just like you guys are just really trying to force a connection here, like they're really like Independence Day Resurgence, where they had to force a connection there, where it's like, yeah, this character is Will Smith's son from the original movie, here's Jeff Goldblum, and he's not going to really do much to add to the film either. Or even like these later Jurassic Park movies where like, I mean, they're trying to crowbar like Dominion. There we go. I was like, what the hell was that one called? Where they really try to crowbar in all that stuff. So you see how bad like something like that can go when it's a sequel years later. They bring back original cast members. They're trying to recreate that same feeling. I'm glad this movie just set out to do what it was going to do, and that was being a spectacle, and it added more to that. If it was just a spectacle, like if I didn't really care about the characters, I probably still had a fun time at the theater with how good the special effects were, the sound was, and that damn soundtrack was fucking great too. So, the fact that it had more to it and it didn't try to overshoot itself, it didn't try to oversell itself, it just did what it was like considered like, hey, let's just make a good time at the theater. Let's not try to overdo this. Let's not try to overthink this. Let's just shoot out what we're here to do. For me, it is also a very solid 3 out of 4 stars.
I'll preface my closing thoughts by reiterating the story I just saw. I wanted to show this to Catherine a couple of weeks ago. My favorite Bill Paxton performance is Broken Lizard's Club Dread. And where he plays sort of a washed up, like Jimmy Buffett-esque island resort owner, and his big hit is called Pina Colada Burg. And it's a murder comedy, or it's a horror comedy set on an island. And instead of what was it? It's instead of Margaritaville, it's Coconut Pete's Pleasure Island. And Bill Paxton gives an outstanding performance in that. And I was looking up like the director and the lead, the kind of like de facto leader of Broken Lizard, Jay Chandrasekhar. And I was looking up to try to see what he said about Jimmy Buffett's passing. And he made a TikTok video where he talked about Jimmy Buffett and Bill Paxton. And he shared a great Bill Paxton story. He's like, when we were shooting that movie, he said we had to go to the airport. And he said, I'm walking through the airport with Bill Paxton. He's like, every 20 steps we're getting stopped because somebody recognizes him. And he's like, nobody recognizes me. I'm like, I'm the guy from Super Troopers. Fuck you. Anyway, we're walking, and he's like, guy comes up to Bill Paxton. He goes, dude, I loved you in Twister. And Bill Paxton goes in his wallet. He goes, hey, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Here's $20. And then he's like, we walk another 10 steps, and then it's, oh, I loved you in Tombstone. And then he's like, this couple comes up, loved you in Tombstone, Bill. And he goes, oh, it's awesome, man. I'm gonna give you each $20. And Bill, and he's like, after that, Bill, he's like, he must have handed out $200 worth of 20s at the airport that day. And he told me, he goes, Jay, always keep a roll of 20s in your wallet. Somebody comes up, tells you you love the movie, give them $20. You're gonna make that back. They'll go see the movie. He said that was his thing. He said he did that to everybody who came up to him. He gave him $20. Like,
that's awesome.
And he said, he's like, dude, he's like, make sure you keep a roll of 20. Somebody comes up, tells you they love your movie, give them $20. You're going to make that money back. They're going to go see your movie. It's going to be great. But anyway, so I wanted to share that though, because I'm a big Bill Paxton fan. But yeah, the one thing that I was going to mention as I lead into closing thoughts though, besides that, is the soundtrack. The soundtrack's fucking great. This might be the best soundtrack of the year as far as OST is concerned. They got every country singer that's notable now to do a song for this. Catherine and I saw Lainey Wilson in concert at the Great Jones County Fair last week. Lainey Wilson actually performed the song that she does in Twisters out of Oklahoma. Awesome. And that was cool. That was before we had seen the movie. That was cool. Luke Combs' Ain't No Love in Oklahoma, huge hit on country radio right now. Fantastic song. Comes in at a good time in this movie. Comes in at a good time. I would have liked for it to come back during a tornado montage, but I wasn't mad that it doesn't, because one of my favorite Chris Stapleton songs, Arkansas, plays during a tornado montage. Yeah. That's one of Chris Stapleton's more like, I know he's more known as like kind of a low-key Americana singer. Arkansas is one of his rowdier songs, and that song plays perfectly in the movie too. You also have the great, might be my favorite country singer working today, the great Charlie Crockett. His cover of Ghost Riders in the Sky is absolutely phenomenal. Lainey Wilson's song too. There's a lot of really good music in this movie. Ton of original songs.
It's so funny how like between Chloe Zhao for Nomadland and Lee Isaac Chung for Minari in this movie, Asians like have a lock on like that the Great Plains and the Midwest in America. It's like it's so like that's awesome. That's freaking
It's
awesome.
true.
They understand it so damn well. They capture it beautifully.
That's a good point with Chloe Zhao too. Yeah, with Nomadland. That's a fantastic connection right there. It's 3 out of 4 stars for me. I had a really good time at the movies with this. I think this is really what a summer blockbuster is made of, a quality summer blockbuster. It's got strong performances. It's got some really good set pieces too. And it also, and again, it's hard to praise the movie intensely for something it doesn't do. But as Joe very eloquently said, this movie doesn't try to crowbar any sort of connection with the original Twister. It allows it to be its own thing and stand on its own 2 feet, which I deeply appreciate. And I thought it was a ton of fun. I think it's a great theater experience. I hope it doesn't really get too marginalized over the next couple of weeks because Deadpool and Wolverine is going to command so much oxygen in multiplexes. I hope it doesn't get kind of clubbed. It's doing very well right now. It really exceeded expectations opening weekend, which was cool to see. I do think, though, when I was talking to James Berardinelli, the film critic, though, a couple months ago, when we were talking about The Fall Guy and Furiosa underperforming, he said, though, he's like, they should have released, he's like, they shouldn't have tried to do The Fall Guy on Memorial Day weekend to kick off the summer blockbuster. He's like, in my opinion, that movie was always going to have a hard time breaking even. He said, he's like, it's a good movie, but he's like, it's not the kind of thing that in this day and age gets people out to the theater in droves like it used to. And he said, he's like, Twisters, I think, would have been a much safer bet. And at the time, this was before Inside Out 2 made all this money. He was like, it wouldn't have been such a pessimistic start to the summer blockbuster season if they would have tried to drop Twisters on Memorial Day. He's like, I think that's what he said. He's like, I don't think Hollywood, he's like, I think Hollywood has an over budget problem. And he's like, I think they have a release date problem. And I think he's right. I thought that was a really good conversation we had. But that does it for Twisters and this episode of Sleepless with Steve. We're back next week. Of course, we're going to talk Deadpool and Wolverine. I've already broken my promise now. I said I wasn't going to see any more Marvel movies, except be very selective of the ones I've seen. I think this is the first Marvel movie I've seen, or I'm going to see, since Guardians 3.
Yeah.
So I've been really I've really been out of the loop. I said after Guardians 3.
Honestly, because of how much these movies have been underperforming, like they make massive amounts of money, but it's underperforming to them. There hasn't been much since Guardians 3 either, so you haven't missed much.
No, there really hasn't. There really hasn't been much that showed me shit. This is one, though. It's like I've seen the first 2. I like the first 2. I'll see this one. And this one kind of feels more like a cultural event, even too. So I kind of want to be there for that. So
it's giving me the like vibe of this is more of a goodbye to 20th Century Fox's like whole setting, like more of a goodbye to that than actual Marvel.
That's a good point. Yeah, the sun's kind of setting on the 20th Century Fox era of Marvel. And that's kind of what this feels like, because Deadpool and X-Men were famously the loner properties for Marvel to Fox. That's a good point.
And it's different from the typical MCU shit, because guess what? They shot this shit actually on location and didn't really use that many green screens. It's like, wow, hey, look at that.
Yeah, and it's R-rated too. It's R-rated as well. That's our show tonight, though. We're talking Deadpool and Wolverine next week on the show, and made a quick decision. We're going to talk Trap the following week, so very excited about that. Thank you so much for watching. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.